In 2015, a property went on the market in Santa Barbara County. The listing price was $100 million. It had a 13,000 square foot French country mansion, a private movie theater, a 4-acre lake with a waterfall, a fully functioning train station, a Ferris wheel, a carousel, a petting zoo, Disneyland-style gardens across 2,700 acres. There was nothing else like it on Earth. 5 years later, it sold for $22 million. Not $100 million, not $67 million, not even $31 million, just $22 million for a property its owner had spent $52 million acquiring and building. A property that had been called the most extraordinary private estate in America. A property that every real estate expert in the country agreed should have been worth significantly more than what it eventually sold for. So what happened? How does the most famous private estate in pop culture history end up selling for less than half of what was spent on it? The answer is not what most people think, and it involves money, betrayal, a loan default, a name that became impossible to separate from controversy, and a decision Michael Jackson made in 2005 that sealed the ranch's fate long before any real estate agent ever put a number on it. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. This story is more complicated than you know. To understand why Neverland sold for so little, you first have to understand what it actually was. Michael Jackson bought the ranch in 1988 for $17 million, then poured an additional $35 million into transforming it. A private train running across the full grounds with a working station, a 50-seat movie theater with full concessions, a 4-acre artificial lake with a waterfall, a carousel, a Ferris wheel, a basketball court, tennis courts, a barn, a firehouse, multiple guest houses. He shipped an 18th-century French chateau floor across the Atlantic and had craftsmen spend years reassembling it in his kitchen. He bought the 1939 Oscar for Gone with the Wind for $1.5 million and put it on a rotating pedestal in his living room. He named it Neverland, after the place where a boy never grows up. And that name said everything. This was not vanity. This was a man who had been performing since he was 5 years old, who never had a real childhood, building the one thing money could actually give him. A place that felt like what childhood was supposed to feel like. For a time, it was exactly that. In November 2003, 70 police officers arrived at Neverland Ranch with search warrants. Every room, every cabinet, every private space, for hours. The 2005 trial that followed put Neverland at the center of one of the most covered criminal cases in history. The ranch became synonymous with the accusations regardless of what the verdict eventually said. He was acquitted on all 14 counts, but acquittal did not give him Neverland back. In 2005, Michael Jackson walked out of the ranch and never returned. Not once, not for a single night, not to collect a personal item or stand in a room he had spent years building. He left, and Neverland began dying the moment he did. A property like this does not maintain itself. It required constant staffing, constant maintenance, constant active care. Without Michael present, without the energy and resources that had kept it alive, the decay started almost immediately. Staff reduced. Maintenance fell behind. The rides sat still. The magic of Neverland was entirely dependent on the person who built it being there to sustain it. That person was gone. By 2008, 3 years after Michael left, the financial reality had become critical. He defaulted on a $24.5 million loan tied to the ranch. Colony Capital stepped in, acquired the debt, and took controlling interest in the property. After Michael's death in 2009, the dismantling began in earnest. The petting zoo shut down, animals removed. Then the rides, the Ferris wheel, the carousel, everything that had made Neverland something beyond ordinary real estate gone. And then the detail that tells the whole story in one image. The rides were sold off and ended up at county fairs across California, Oregon, and Washington. Some found permanent homes at Coney Island and Beach Bend Park. What was once the most exclusive private amusement park in America, built for the most famous person on Earth, became something ordinary people rode on weekends without knowing where it came from. The magic wasn't just gone. It was scattered across 3 states in pieces. By the time the property listed for $100 million in 2015, the soul of the place had already been removed. The land was still there. The main house was still standing. But what made it Neverland was not. Here is the real reason Neverland sat unsold for 5 years. It was not the condition, not the location, not the land. It was the name. Buying Neverland did not mean buying 2,700 acres of Santa Barbara real estate. It meant buying everything attached to that name. Every documentary, every accusation, every headline, every association that word carried in the minds of anyone who heard it. The buyers who could afford a $100 million estate were not looking for that. They wanted privacy, a clean slate, a home that didn't generate immediate, uncomfortable associations the moment someone asked where they lived. Neverland could not offer any of that. So the price dropped, $100 million to $67 million, then $31 million, then lower still until finally in 2020, billionaire Ron Burkle bought it for $22 million, less than what Michael paid for the raw land in 1988, before a single dollar of the $35 million in improvements had been added. The French chateau floors, the rotating Oscar pedestal, the train station, the theater added nothing to the final sale price, either gone or irrelevant or too inseparable from a story the market refused to buy. Burkle renamed it Sycamore Valley Ranch and quietly began restoring it. By 2022, county permits confirmed roofing, electrical and structural repair work across the property. A new owner clearly committed to bringing the remaining buildings back to usable condition. Then in 2024, Hollywood came back. The Michael Jackson biopic filmed dialogue scenes, petting zoo footage and stunt work at the actual property. The ranch that had sat silent and unsellable for years suddenly became the most talked about filming location in Hollywood. And that matters because the biopic brought an entirely new generation to Michael Jackson's story. Young audiences with no memory of the trial, no pre-existing association between Neverland and controversy. For those viewers, Neverland is not a symbol of a scandal. It looks like something from a dream. That shift, slow as it is exactly what Burkle likely saw when he paid $22 million for a property the market had written off. Not what Neverland was, what it could become once enough time passed and enough new eyes saw it without the weight of everything that came before. So here is the complete answer. A police raid that turned a sanctuary into a symbol of scandal. A man who walked out in 2005 and never came back, leaving a living world to collapse without him. A loan default that handed control to investors who stripped out everything that had made it extraordinary. A name so loaded with cultural weight that the real estate market spent 5 years refusing to touch it. And a final sale to someone who looked past all of it and saw 2,700 acres of land still carrying the vision of the person who built it. Michael Jackson spent $52 million turning a ranch into a world. The world gave it back for $22 million. And in that gap between what he paid and what it sold for is the whole story of what happens when fame turns against the person carrying it. Subscribe and hit the bell for more stories like this one. Drop a comment. Do you think Neverland will ever be what it was? Or is that world gone forever? I read every single one.